I'm just fixing something. All right, there it goes. And it looks like we have enough people here. Okay, are there any questions? Any questions at all? Okay, can people hear me?
Yep.
We can hear you.
Okay. I'm going to give you a mini example of what you need to do for your homework. And so this whole idea of, oh, wait a minute, before I get into this, guess what? Okay, since we're in a couple of weeks into the semester now, we are now going to have attendance quizzes. That's right, at the beginning of every class, I'm going to ask you a question. I will give you the answer to the question. Right now, I want everyone to get on Canvas and to do this question. If you get a 1 or a 0, it will still count as long as you try the quiz. I just want to see how many people understand what's going on right now. It won't reflect on you either way. So here's the question. DOE and marketing is used to find out what the Department of Energy is doing, what factors are significant for customers, what factors cost the most, and definition of equations tells us what are good and bad markets. Which of those is the best answer?
I think the last one, the definition of equations.
I thought that
I'll put it this
too.
way. Everyone put in your answer and wait for everyone else to put in your answer, and then we'll discuss it. Okay, has everyone done it, or do we need more time?
I did it.
Yeah, mine's done.
Yeah, same.
I'm done as well, Professor.
Okay, does anyone need
I
more?
need some more time.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
So it doesn't matter if I get it wrong or right, right?
Right. As long as it shows that you attempted it, you're here. That's the only thing that matters.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm sorry, I joined the class a little late because I had some internet issues. Could I know what's happening?
If you go to Canvas and go to quizzes, there's an attendance quiz for today. What's going to happen is at the beginning of class, I'm going to give you a question based on the previous class. It doesn't matter if you get it right or wrong. The only thing that matters is that you attempt it. That shows that you were here.
All right, thank you.
I think I'm with the rest of you. We should have had President's Day off.
I agree. Yes.
I've been flirting around with an idea since we're waiting for certain people to finish the quiz. I just want to get a little informal feedback. I'm thinking about having a spring break week, meaning I think it was either March 3rd or March 9th. You were supposed to have spring break. What spring break week is, I'm going to make the assignment optional. You can use it to replace an assignment, like if you got a 0 or something, or you can do it for extra credit if you want to tack on points to something else.
I think that's a great idea for like extra credit.
And the second thing is we won't have class that week. All the lectures will be on video. You watch it when you want to. So that week we're going to have an online class with nothing due. That's a spring break I'm thinking of.
Yes, I agree. That's really nice.
Sounds like a plan.
I don't know. I mean, I understand why they canceled it because of COVID and stuff like that. But sheesh, they could at least given you President's Day.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we don't get any more days off until summer now.
And
I don't know why they cancel it. There's like many students still traveling in the weekend, you know? So I don't know why they canceled the spring break.
they're afraid you're all going to go run to the corners of the earth and get sick and come back.
Most of us have online only classes anyway.
Yep.
But I just think we're gonna like end the semester earlier.
As the old saying goes, don't ask me, I just work here. But I'll tell you what, I'll formalize it in an announcement. And so that way you know that it's for real. And plus we're only 2 weeks away anyway. Anyway, going to, is everybody ready?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so DOE stands for Design of Experiments. And the reason why we use it in marketing is, like, for example, supposing I was baking cookies. And so I have amount of sugar, amount of water, amount of flour, amount of eggs. And I'm tasting these cookies and I use a different amount of all these ingredients. And then I tell you, this is the best cookie. Well, maybe some of these things don't matter so much. Maybe the amount of water you put in doesn't matter as much or something like that. And so what design of experiments do is tell you what factors based on my feedback of rating the cookie are important and which ones aren't. So which are significant and which aren't significant. So what the Department of Energy is doing is wrong. What factors are significant for customers? Well, that's what I just told you. So I kind of give it away. What factors cost the most? No, not really. And definition of equations, I have no idea what that is. I just made it up. Tells us what are good and bad markets. So the answer is what factors are significant for customers. Anyway, remember I told you I'd help you with your homework? Okay, so let's jump into a DOE example. Now, this is a mini version of your homework. Here's the thing about your homework. If you know how to do it right, it'll take you an hour tops. If you don't know how to do it right, it could take you 12 hours. I felt so bad. I had this psychology student. She didn't know how to use Excel. She missed the class with me explaining the shortcuts, and she did it by hand. She literally turned in about 30 pages of calculations. I felt so bad for her. And how much time did you spend on this? I'm looking at it, and she says, about 12 hours. And they said, and that doesn't count all the time I spent reading all your papers and everything else. And I'm like, oh. So this is why, to a large extent, this really isn't that hard. But I think where students kind of struggle a little bit with it is just understanding what it is. Like, for example, supposing I have a Samsung 21 5G camera, and I want to know, what is it about this camera that people like about it? And by understanding what people like about it, tells me how much I can charge for it. And basically, the factors that are significant are the things that people are most likely going to pay money for. That's the biggest thing of all. Remember, the main caveat of products, they want everything and they don't want to pay for it. I need to figure out what is it that they're going to pay for. So what I do is I pick a high value and a low value for each. So the variables I think that they're going to be wanting to look at, that they care about are, can people see this screen okay?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So one is the camera, the fact that it has a dual screen, or the price. What do people like best? So the camera, you have to pick a high value and a low value. Now, if you remember, the reason why I don't pick 3 values is because if I have 3 values, then it's 3 times 3 times 3, which means I have 27 experiments. On the other hand, if I only have 2, then it's 2 times 2 times 2, which means I have 8 experiments. This is why typically they start with a low number. And then if they need more resolution, they pick a high number. Now, the thing is, the numbers you pick could actually be based. Now, I could pick 2K and 10K if I wanted to as my range. But you have to be careful about the range you pick, because you might pick a range that's so extreme that the outcome is always going to be 0. And then you don't learn anything. You got to pick a range that people are interested in, but what's the high and what's the low? And that's what plus minus means, the high value and the low value. So based on that, how many combinations do I have? Like minus, plus, plus. What this means is if you have a camera that only has a 4K camera, that plus means yes. And the thing is, how do you do yes and no? Well, you just assign arbitrary values. This could be 1 and 5, 1 and 2. Doesn't matter. I pick 1 and 5 because there's a nice, good spread there. So what's this combination here? What this combination here is, I have a 4K camera that has a dual screen, but is priced at $1,500. That's what this how would I, on a scale from 1 to 7, say I'm using a Likert scale. A lot of you have probably seen it where like 1 means I love it, and 7 means I hate it, and 4 means I'm neutral. So from a 1 to 7 scale, you might use a 1 to 5 scale. The thing is, the scale can't be too finite. Like, for example, if I use a 1 to 3 scale, you know, it's such a low number. How do you tell the difference? If I use a scale of, say, 1 to 10,000, well, what's the difference between 597 and 598? See, it scale's too big. You need it to be, and that's why Likert scales are typically 1 to 5 or 1 to 7. So what I do is I hand this out to a bunch, have this poll to a bunch of customers, and they give me ratings, and then I figure out what the average value is. On the other hand, what about this one? This says, how do you rate an 8K camera with a dual screen, but only costs $1,100? Well, naturally, that's going to get a really high rating. And that's why some of these tests aren't even worth doing. Like, everybody's going to give this a really high rating. So in terms of all 8 tests, you do all 8 because that's the number of combinations. But the guys who are really good at this, what they do is they start throwing out some of these tests. For example, minus plus plus. A 4K camera that doesn't have dual screens and pay $1,500, so pay more for less, everybody's going to give that a crappy rating. So what's the point of asking it? It doesn't give you any good information. But so what it comes out to is that we have these 8 combinations of different features. Okay, is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, now I'm going to put in numbers for these. And then based on these combinations, these are the ratings that come out. And the average of these ratings comes out to be 4.25. So now what I need to do is figure out what is the factor for each one of these variables. What's its rating, basically? Factor. The higher the factor, the more significant it is. Lower factor, less significant. And what I do is I figure out I have to have my factor plus minus my factor minus. And my total factor is my factor plus minus my factor minus. Here's the way that you could do it very quickly using Excel. And it's a function called SUMIF. Now, factor plus means all the high values related to the rating, all the high values. So 8. So my numbers would be, my high values are 8s. So what are these values? I have a 3, I have a 6, I have a 1, and I have a 4. And so it's the sum of all these divided by 4, or n. And so if you go back to the last lecture or 2 lectures ago and look at the slides, it has the equation in there. So the way I figure it out is my factor plus, to calculate it for just camera, equals SUMIF. Okay, so SUMIF, my range. So what this says is add it up only if these numbers equal 8, because I only want my high values, then return these numbers. So what it'll do is every time it sees an 8, it'll give me one of these. And so the sum turns out to be 14. However, the equation is divided by the number of 8s I have up here. So you could shortcut and just put in 4. Or if you want to be more specific, like when you have a really big one, count if all of these is equal to 8. So 14 divided by 4 is 3.5. Hey, look at that, the math works. Now, here's where you can get kind of tricky. And that's it. I know I'm always going to be, now when I go to dual screen, I want to look at J2 to J9. The numbers don't change, just the letters. So if the numbers aren't going to change, you could put in a $sign because the numbers aren't going to change. And my L2 and L9, those are going to be exactly the same for every problem I solve. So I'm going to put in a bunch of dollar signs. Yes, and I will post this video. And so count if the numbers don't change, just the letters. And what you can do actually is, I'm doing this calculation for camera. I'm also going to do it for dual screen. I'm also going to do it for price. So let's do factor minus. What you can do is drag it and copy it. So now when I copy this, sum if these values, but now I want to look at the low value. So I want to look at 4. So now what this will do is figure out all the numbers related to 4. And count if it equals 4. There, figured it out for me. Is everybody okay on how I did this so far?
So are we just supposed to find a bunch of random numbers and plug it in and use these equations to find those averages? Like we could use any product, like, I don't know, a wallet, and have a bunch of random ratings associated with it and plug it in and make a graph.
Oh, these aren't random. This is data. You went out and asked people this.
Are we supposed to go out and ask people, or do we just
Your
make up
homework,
numbers?
somebody's collected the data for you already.
Okay.
So now you're doing the analysis. So you're given this, so your homework is you're given this data, now you have to figure out. And I believe it's kind of funny because I've done different versions of this. I've done Snakebite, which is I use the Diamondbacks, and I think I'm using the Coyote Mess. And what it's about is they went out and got data from a whole bunch of people on what they like about hockey. Do you like the facility? Do you like a winning team? And so now based on that, you have to analyze it and tell the people what it is that you like about hockey. And so you figure out what you need to focus on in terms of presenting a product of hockey. And so this isn't random. This is based on your parameters, that picking a high value and a low value, each of these comes out with 8 combinations of products. And so now in terms of rating, it's not random. You go out and you put this in front of people and ask them, how would you rate this? So you're taking survey data. And then you collect all that survey data. And you, in this case, I'm just making, this is an example. So I'm just giving you clean numbers of what to use for a rating.
Can you explain again why you use the dollar sign?
Okay, in Excel, like, okay, say this is a equals this number. Now, supposing I wanted to copy this going forward, then in Excel, when you just pull the tab, it copies. So what does N say? I2. What does O say? J2. What does this say? K2. And this is L2. So as you can see, it's all these values. Now, so what Excel will do is, what did it do? When you're staying on the same number, it will just use the same letter reference and increase it 1. Now, what happens when I pull down? It increases the number by 1. So instead of I2, this is I3, I4, so on. Now, supposing I don't want to increase the number, that this number is J2, and I want them all to be J2. So I want to freeze that number 2. So I put a dollar sign in front of it, and it freezes the number. Now, this one I pull down, it's all 5s. You see, everything stayed J2, while this kept increasing. That's what the dollar sign does. supposing I want to pull it this way, but now it's K2. And what if I wanted to stay K? I put a $sign in front of it. And now when I pull it, they're all Ks. They don't become Ls and Ms and everything else.
Okay, thank you.
So that's a little trick in Excel. Why is it useful? You'll see in a moment. So in terms of factors, my SUMIF gives me the high values divided by the number of 8s. And this one is my low values, which is equal to 4. Again, it's the rating that tells me my factors plus and minus. The thing is, the rating numbers I pick are going to be different for each of these because they have different orders of pluses and minuses, as you see from here. And so my final factor number is just equal to this minus this. So it comes out to be -1.5. Now this is where these $signs come in useful. You can grab this and just pull it. And the problem now I go to this. Okay, it's my high value because I'm looking at factor plus. The reason why it says divide by 0 is because I haven't changed the values. So now instead of 8, it's 5. And I change this to a 5. And now I have that value. This one, instead of an 8, it's 1500. And this is 1500. And so that's 5.25. Now what I can also do is pull this down. And so now I could change this to a 4, change this, whoops. Let's see, Control Z. Change this to a 4. And oops.
It's supposed to be 1.
Right. And 1, ta-da, and I get 5.75. And so here, with this 1500, now this is 1100 on the bottom. So you see, the reason why I could just pull it is because I froze this, meaning I know I just want these values. But the thing is, I want to change my first letter, but I don't want to change the number when I pull this down. And these numbers are always going to be the same. I'm always going to be looking at this one. So that's why they have double $signs. And then the COUNTIF, same thing. I'm going to change the number, the letter. But what I'm going to change is the number. And so my factor, it's just these two subtracted. I just pull it. So now when I look at this, which number is the most significant? Well, the thing is, there are two different questions here. One is significance, and one is what does the sign mean? Significant is just the absolute value. So what you do is you compare these numbers to the average. Typically, if you're at least 10% greater than this, you're significant. So all three of these are significant, but the question is what's most significant? So which one of these is most significant?
Dual screen.
Right, dual screen. As it turns out, what people love most about the Samsung phone is the dual screen. The thing they care about the least is the camera. Kind of makes sense. Now, what does a minus sign mean? Well, the way you can look at it is graph it. For example, the camera. We said that with the camera, the low number, the 1, is 4K. The high number is 8K. My Likert scale, I said, well, this should say 7. 7 is I hate it, and 1 means I love it. So plotting this a negative slope, it would go this way. If it was a positive slope, it would go this way. So what this is saying is that customers like an 8K camera best. That's why the slope is negative. Now, why is this negative? Because my dual screen, 5 means it's got a dual screen. And that's why the slope is negative. Now, price could be positive because what do they like more? Low price, not high price. That's what the signs mean. And that's what 2 of the questions, those are the 2 primary questions that you get asked about a design of experiments. Are there any questions?
So in the assignment that we have to do, it will give us I think it's 5 factors, right, for this one? And we'll
Right.
pretty much just do exactly what you have here, but with 5 factors, and then also answer the questions after.
Right.
Cute.
That's it. If you can do this, 5 factors means 2 to the 5th means we have 32. But whether you have 8, 4, or 32, the math is the same. All you need is sum if. Sum if, okay, the column, find all the high numbers that correlate to the rating. And so add up all those numbers and divide by the total number of high numbers I have. So in this case, it's 4. If I have 32 factors and it's going to be 16, you could put COUNTIF in, or you could just make it simple and say divide by 4, or divide by 8, or whatever.
Sorry, do we have to do the graph as well for the assignment? 'Cause
You'll have questions asking you for each one of the factors that you end up picking. What is the significance of the slope?
okay,
And so you don't have to draw the slope, but the only reason why I would suggest, at least on a piece of scratch paper or whatever, to draw the slope, is just so you remember, okay, well, what is the slope telling me? In this case, it means they don't like the 4K, but they like the 8K. Just to make sure that, you know, you get it right. But yeah, you don't have to turn it in.
So for the assignment, it should be look like this, right? Like factors, like should be look like this, the Excel one, right?
The question asks you what's significant. And so in order to figure out what's significant, you need to calculate the factors.
Okay.
And if you need more background, there's also papers that are under your readings that you can look at. All right, is everyone okay?
Yep.
All right. And you still have, the reason why I gave it to you today is for those of you who get a head start, but there's also Wednesday. Anyway, yeah, now for some of you, this might be review. Some people have never seen it before. That's the thing about a class like this. It's kind of funny because I joke that this class is my UN class, meaning everybody comes from like a different background. Some, this is actually kind of boring. Some people, this is something they've never seen before. Okay, do people see lecture 3.3?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, no. So last time, just as a review, we talked about pricing. And how does pricing work? Well, first of all, remember there's only two ways you get the price. One is based on profit. How much does it cost plus how much more I want to make? I need to make a profit. And the second approach is value-based pricing, which means perception. This is how much I think it's worth to me. And naturally, we like to be in the perception range because that means we can charge a lot more, like Apple does. We saw the different margins of companies that are more driven by perception than simply by profit. The thing about pricing is it affects the entire marketing mix. For example, if I'm pricing something really expensive, then my distribution better have luxury to it. For example, you go into a car showroom for Mercedes, it's a much different car showroom than it is for Kia. The people, the way they dress, the way they talk and everything is different. Pricing affects the view of your product. If your price too low, you think you got a discount price, something cheesy. If it's priced very high, you think it's a luxury price. And also how you promote is in line with the pricing. Anyway, what do I use pricing for? I can use it for offense. And that's, remember, penetration pricing. If I want my product to get out there, I make it low. Neutral pricing, it's what it's worth. Skim pricing, I put the price really high. I could put my pricing in such a way that there's heavy switching costs. For example, if I have something that's expensive, people may not switch off of it because they already paid so much money for something else, like those HP printer heads I talked about. In terms of offense, I can attack different tiers. Remember, you can attack from top to bottom, but it's hard to attack bottom to top. Again, Mercedes can come out with a middle-class car model and people would be interested in it. On the other hand, I hate picking on poor Kia because they actually make a pretty decent car. But actually, it was really funny. I was talking to a car dealer and he sold like 4 different brands of cars. I told him, which car sells the most? He said, oh, the Kias. And I'm like, really? And he said, because people want a brand new car and Kia is still priced low enough that people who want a brand new car can get a brand new car. It's like, huh. Anyway, you can attack tiers, but if you have a cheap car like a Kia, all of a sudden it's not going to start competing with Maserati or something like that. You could do pricing to fill in gaps. Like, for example, if something is really cheap, like freemium, like design software, what happened is your choice in design software at one point became free university stuff that was really buggy, or you could pay $100,000 a seat for the Cadillac stuff. And what one company saw is that's a big gap in price. And so you can come in the middle. And what they did is they started offering software $5,000 to $10,000 for people who couldn't afford the expensive stuff. And then you can use pricing to attack. No, drop the price for a short time. Maybe you're going to use your pricing for defense, meaning match pricing. If you remember, as long as you're within 70% of their drop, you're pretty much viewed as the same. Maybe you want to go for price leadership. I'm going to drop my price down and have the best price. I could fill gaps, or I can start doing bundles or promotions to counteract what my competition is doing. Now, where do I get my data for pricing? And there are different ways you can do it. Surveys, conjoint analysis, reference points. But I need to do some kind of study. One thing I wanted to see in your case studies for Thin TV is when you come up with the price, like some of you accurately and rightly said, like, for example, I would charge more for the 2-inch because there's no product like it on the market. So I'm going to charge 150%. But you didn't tell me why it was 150%. Like, why not 160%? Why not 140%? Why 150? Some of you did an excellent job. You basically, basically you listened to me. It's actually funny. One of my better students, Nick Flowers, and I always thought this was a hard class. And he said to me, well, to tell you the truth, Dr. Cho, this class is pretty easy. I'm like, all I ever get is complaints. And he said, well, you tell us all the answers if you just listen and take good notes. But anyway, there are all different ways you can get data that'll tell you, where should your pricing be? And then based on that, you can start designing what your pricing is going to be based on the cost, the perceived value. And you look at the 5 C's, basically, how does a customer or your collaborators and everything else affect your pricing? That's it. That whole lecture is on this one slide. But the bottom line in pricing is you pay for value. The way you value something, that's what you're willing to pay. So now we move on to the next part of the 4 Ps, which is product. Again, the thing is, what product is about is what features will customers pay for and how does it support the other Ps. So we're going to talk about products, the new product process. How do I test it? And so once again, the landscape. Product is affected by everything. Context. Right now, GM and Ford are going to drop gasoline-made cars by like 2035, which floored me. I thought gasoline cars would be around longer than that, but they're embracing the future, and it's because everything has gone green, global warming, everything else. That's context. My product is impacted by who my customers are, who I'm going to collaborate with, and all the rest of the C's. So when we look at new product introductions, what is it that people do? And when we look at new products, what we look at is how new is it to this firm? Like, have we ever done this before? Or how new is it to the market? And so where's the greatest amount of risk? So the simplest thing to do is reduce cost. That's not new to the firm, and it's not new to the market. On the other hand, I can offer a product improvement, and iPhone's already out there, so it's not that new to the market, but it is new to this firm because we've never built that before. And then finally, I can introduce a new product line like Starbucks tea. I can have a line extension, which is just another version of what already exists, like a Mercedes S-Class versus a C-Class or something like that. Excedrin, Excedra PM, so on and so forth. And naturally, if I'm talking about totally new to the market and also new to the firm, would be like the Walkman. And so as you can see, where my cost is minimum is when I do cost reduction. On the other hand, where's my risk vector? What direction do I go in that's riskiest? And that's that it's riskiest when I do things that are totally new to the market and new to me. That's where my risk is. And this is why people do line extensions, because I want to do something aggressive and new, but at the same time, I don't want to take a lot of risks at it. And that's how you end up with crappy movies like Star Wars episodes 7, 8, and 9. I still want my money back. Is this a good idea to just keep making sequels? Or are you better off making a totally new sci-fi movie? And this is the thing, Men in Black 2 is not that new to the firm. They've done it before, and this is why you see so many sequels and awful ones or remakes, because there's less risk. Why do I want new products? Defense, meaning I want to keep my customers' interest and stop my competitor from doing things. Or it could be offense, meaning I want to grab market share, or I'm anticipating new customers. So I'm jumping in there to get in there. Here's the thing about new products. The success rate is could be 60% and the failure could be 20%. And so this is a collection of data that they got. Here's the thing, a lot of this data is outdated. And what they find is actually a lot of products ended up failing. The thing is, how many products end up on budget? Only 57%. How many actually are a significant part of your revenue? And it's only 27.5%. Here's a percentage of new products that are successes, failures, or get killed. And so your top performers, your successes, failures, or kills, your middle performers, and your bottom performers. And as you can see, the percentage on bottom performers actually gets higher. So why do they products fail? Well, maybe they were too smart. Maybe you made this really sophisticated and complicated product that nobody wanted. Maybe it was unoriginal. Or maybe you were just too slow to market. Everybody said, oh, you're just copying what's already out there. The price doesn't match the value. Or technology. Technology products always have bugs. When they're first released, that's why I wait until they come out. So when we start looking at the 5 C's, the difference between companies depends on commitment. What is your role in the market? Internally, are you an innovator? Are you an inventor company? Are you an innovator company? Or do you just acquire other companies? And that's what a lot of biomedical firms do. In terms of commitment, how much money are you going to put into it? Philip Morris was willing to lose money on Miller Brands for 5 years just to get into the light beer market. So the process of it is, first I have to have an idea, a theory of why this product will work. And then I have to go test it, develop it, introduce it to the market, and manage it through its life. That's the life cycle of a product. And so with my product, my revenue climbs greatly. First, when I introduce, it's really low. Then my growth mode, I go sky high. Then I become mature. And then you go down and die. The thing is profit, look at profit here. It peaks out somewhere between the end of the growth phase and then it goes down. Why does profit decline when revenue is going up, but profit is going down? Why do you think that's happening? When a product is mature, do you raise the price or do you lower the price?
Lower.
Lower, exactly. And this is what happens when you become a mature product. You sell more of them because you've dropped the price down, but now your profit margin has gotten very, very thin. And that's why your profit goes down. And that's why you want to stick in here. You want to be in the growth mode. We look at things. Does this hypothesis make sense? Is it compatible? Can I communicate it easily? Do I understand the cost benefit? That if they spend this much, what's the benefit to them? And also, how much does it cost me to get the customer in a position where they're going to go ahead and try it? In the life cycle, there's something called the coefficient of innovation and the coefficient of imitation. And what happens is when we look at these curves, they either spike or they shift. So they're either going up and down in Y or right and left in X. And my coefficient of innovation means, how innovative are the products I have coming out And what happens if I have an innovative product? This curve is going to shift left, meaning, wow, it's brand new and interesting. So I'm going to get sales earlier in the process. On the other hand, if I have coefficient of imitation, which means that I'm basically just copying off of someone else. Originally, I get a lot of novelty, so I get a spike and then it dies out. So it's impacted by my vertical. The thing is, adopters are either innovators or imitators. Innovators, those are the people who buy your product early and they're critical at first, but they lose their importance deeper into the cycle. It's about the greater population. Imitators are influenced by previous buyers. So this is Q in the Bass model. And as you can imagine, those are the people that you make your money from because they see other people using it. They want it too. We talked about the chasm before. And you actually had a question about that in Thin TV. What it comes down to is the easiest way to see whether or not you have a chasm is just look at it. Is there a change in the slope? And as you can see in all of these, there's a change in the slope. On the other hand, TV, you don't really see a change in the slope. It just rose up and flattened out. So there wasn't a chasm with TV. On the other products there were. Why do you think these curves are bumpy? I mean, aren't they supposed to be like super smooth? Okay, why do we get bumpiness?
Is it like a seasonal thing or?
Right. Exactly. It could be seasonal. It could be a lot of different issues where selling just isn't that smooth. And so what you need to do is basically figure out why this is happening. So that leads us to our break. Your family is basically a big part of you, and who you are and who you become is shaped by your family. And so in my case, I've gotten considerable strengths in my family. I'm a strong person because of my mother. I mean, have you all heard of macho? Get it? Strong, macho. And the same time, you also have those, you know, every family's got some crazy people. In my case, it's Uncle Sideshow. Get it? Say, anyway. And I learned to cook from Aunt Nacho. Ba-da-da-boom. Okay, the thing is, brand is, you know, companies make mistakes, but how you respond to brands is how the brand treats you. For example, Toyota and Lexus, anytime something goes wrong, what do? They recall the cars. They fix it right away. No questions asked. And that's what they've always been. And that's why people love those companies. On the other hand, here we have, and I believe this was United Airlines, and some woman is sitting in her seat and the guy's complaining. This is what I love about the airlines. They just keep making your seat smaller and smaller and smaller. Part of my language, but this guy said to me, I think airplane seats are designed to squeeze every last ounce of shit out of you. But anyway, this video came out of this guy who starts punching the back of this woman's seat. And interestingly enough, people sided in different ways. Some people sympathize with the poor guy because he's in the back row, he's squashed in, and this woman wants to lean back. And, you know, enough is enough. On the other hand, this woman, she paid for her seat, and that seat is reclining. She should have a right to recline without being harassed by another patron. And the thing is, the airline didn't really do a very good job of reconciling this, and they actually blamed the woman for it. I should probably make this a poll. Maybe I'll do it next time. Do you side with the guy punching with his seat, telling the woman don't lean back? And I've been in those kind of flights before, where the person leans back and they're like all of a sudden sitting in your lap. I don't start punching the seat for the simple reason, hey, if I wanted a nicer airline, I should have paid more money. But the thing is, the fact that they didn't resolve this pretty much shows a bad brand. And now, here's a little challenge question for you. The one thing I've said is you can solve anything. The question is how much is it going to cost me and what's the price? For example, how are we going to save the malls of America? The malls of America, it's really funny because when I was brought up in the 70s and the 80s when malls first came in, and everybody said, oh, the malls are horrible. They're going to be the end of family because all the kids are just going to hang out in the mall. And now those malls are dying. I mean, most of them have Sears attached to it. And the Sears have all gone belly up. And COVID is really, and with more online buying and everything, can you save the malls of America, or is it time just to, give less rights and that's the end of it? I guess I should start making polls. How many people think we can save the malls of America?
If the market's right, the right stores, but mostly that's all like apples. That's
What's the advantage of a mall?
well, for Phoenix especially, it's indoors.
That's a good point. So it's indoors. So during the summer months, it's a place that people want to go to. Are these little places or big places?
Pretty big places.
Right, big places, right? We've got this big place, indoor space. And what's the one thing a store can give you that online can't?
You can touch.
Right. You
Quick
can
satisfaction.
Exactly. You can have an experience. A lot of area, air conditioned. Not only that, when you get people to come in there, can you sell them all kinds of stuff?
Yep.
Yep. You can start selling snacks and future tickets and things like that. So what it comes down to for the malls of America is they do have an advantage, and that's that they can create an experience. So why don't they use that space and create experiences that'll draw people in? I don't know, put on a Wipeout obstacle course.
Add some mini golf.
Yeah, mini golf or whatever. And yet malls of America are just content just to rot away. Here's my idea, and that's that Disneyland is becoming insanely expensive. And not only that, but you only have 2 locations in the United States. You have Disney World and Disneyland. And so, like, if you're in South Dakota or something, how often are you going to be able to get a Disney experience? I was thinking they should take all those Sears stores, hollow them out, and just pick a couple of Disney rides. And so all of a sudden, everybody can get a taste of Disneyland, like a Star Wars ride or something like that. Or, I don't know, It's a Small World, or maybe they should have the little log flume or whatever, but just a couple of rides. People pay $5 a ride or something like that, not too expensive. And think about it, you're paying $5 for like 3 minutes. But you get a taste of Disneyland. And at the end of it, you could have your souvenir shop. So you could sell more of your crap. Why can't you create, experiences like that, or little mini, Universal Studios? And the thing is, people get those experiences and then they want to experience the big thing. What it comes down here is a lot of you had the right ideas of how to save the malls of America. You can solve anything. It's just a matter of really just sitting down and looking at the problem. Anyway, any comments? Questions? Yeah, I got to start putting polls together. So when we test market stuff to see, before we release it, we want to test it and see what people think. The problem is that your competition might know that you're testing things, and they might find ways to interrupt it, like release products in between. The thing is, you need to understand how people are reacting to your product, account for their biases, and also be careful when you test stuff, because you don't want to tip off your competitors. And leave yourself enough time to see a response. A lot of times when you do like digital stuff, you have a promotion and you don't see any data for 2 days. You think, oh my God, it's a disaster. But as it turns out, if you ended up waiting a week, all of a sudden the data comes in. Sometimes there's a lag. The thing about your new product development strategy is, how far do you want to carry the development? What's the worst kind of failure for you? A false positive or a false negative? And a false positive means, I thought everybody wanted to buy it, but nobody wanted to buy it. Or a false negative is, nobody's buying it. Oh, this is a disaster. And as it turns out, it would have been a great success. And you also have to account for, if you decide to be the first mover, the people coming in behind you. If you have a first mover product, the very first of its kind, do you wait for someone else to go through the door, or do you take it out? And what it comes down to is what I talked about before. Be patient and find a bunker. And that bunker means find a market where you can make enough money so you can turn a profit, and then wait for your opportunity. The thing is, a lot of startups get killed because they grow before they're ready to scale. And so incubate in your bunker and wait until the market's ready for you. And that's what happened with Windows. With the product, should I just go for it? And the thing is, you really need to test first, because it's too expensive if you don't. And these are different products that were test marketed, some successfully, some not successfully. And the thing is, if they hadn't test marketed for it, they wouldn't have been successful as they were. The thing is, marketing tools can be applied to product development. You can segment your features. You can use conjoint to target your features, and you can use analogy to compare it to different products. Conjoint is basically looking at combinations. It's a cousin to DOE. They're very similar. Remember, we talked about part utilities. You can fit functions to it. You can figure out what people like about it and come up with models to verify it. You have to be really careful about price, though. Price can skew your results. For example, we talked about segmentation. I can segment my product features. For example, tablet computers, were they driven by display size, performance, and price? And then I could come up with a whole different range. The problem is this is 27 combinations. So how do I make this smaller? Well, one is for display size. I don't need the 10. I could just look at 7 and 12. Remember, high value, low value. Same thing with price. And that would cut it down. So what I do is I pick my variables or attributes, and then I pick levels. So in this case, I'm talking about bubble gum. Essentially, I'm looking at the price per ounce. How long does it last? 5 or 15 minutes? Is it hard? How hard is it? And how sweet is it? And none of these are related to each other, and that's why they're called orthogonal. I run a questionnaire and ask ratings for it. The thing is, I don't need to ask all 8 choices. I could just pick the ones that make sense. And then once I get my data, I could put it into a regression, meaning I could do a curve fit to it. Part of the reason why all the variables aren't here is I have Wrigley and Pure, but I don't have double bubble. And the reason why is if Wrigley and Pure are both 0, then it's assumed the answer is going to be double bubble. The value of the coefficients means the bigger the number, the bigger this is the factor. And that's what the coefficients impact. How do I treat non-numerics? I just use dummy numbers like we did before, like yes can be 1, no can be 5. And U is utility, meaning how useful does the customer think it is? The thing about statistics is there are 2 main statistics that you should be concerned with. One is the F statistic. The F statistic tells me, is this a real result or is this just coincidence? And a T statistic tells me how if these 2 things are related together. Are they dependent on each other? So there are different kinds of polls you can run. One is called adaptive conjoint, and that's that I offer you 2 different products, and then you go ahead and rate which one you like more. 1, 2, 3, meaning how much I like this one more, or 5, 6, 7, how much I like this one more, or am I just neutral? There's something called an adaptive conjoint, and that's you ask a question, and if it's relevant, then you keep going or you stop. For example, I want to learn about housing habits. My first question might be, do you live in Arizona and do you want a house? And if I don't live in Arizona and I don't want a house, well, then you just exit them from the survey. There's something called choice-based conjoint. And what that is that you give them options that are actually real products. Typically, when you do surveys, you tell a preference. This is what I prefer, but you don't know if somebody's going to buy it. And the difference between making a choice and preference is a probability. Maybe 1/3 of all people who prefer it will actually go out and buy it. So in this case, these credit cards are actually real products that you can purchase. So that's why it's called a choice-based conjoint. You don't make it on what preferences are, what actually people have to choose. There's self-explicated conjoint. Yeah, I'm not going to put this on a quiz or anything. So if you want to read more about it, it's here. There are different techniques of doing this, and that's what you do is you put up different combinations of groups and ask people to evaluate what it is that they like. That's the idea behind that one. This hierarchical Bayes conjoint. Take my data class and figure out what this is. But what hierarchical Bayes means is imagine a tree. And so you have different categories and you have different types, and the trees get bigger and bigger and bigger. And there are different levels to that tree, and that's your hierarchy. Some of the things to consider for startup when you're talking about products is what's the cost of manufacturing? This is something you need to figure out early rather than later because that drives your cost up. Are there regulatory issues? How am I going to promote it? What are the channels I use to touch my customer? And finally, can I make partnerships to get rid of certain things? Again, the whole crux of this is customers want everything and they don't want to pay for it. And so challenge to you is what do they want? What will they pay for? And this is where conjoint and design of experiments is so important. And what it comes down to is the product is primarily driven by what your competition is going to do, who you are as a company, and what does the customer want. So those 3 C's mostly drive your product. And so you have to align your product strategy, though, with what you can do, what your company capability is. and understand those dynamics of your customer as well as your competition, because that's what you're going up against. Okay, are there any questions?
Nope.
Okay, no questions. Well, do you want to call do you want to call it a President's Day?
Please.
Let's do it.
Okay, I will see you all on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Take care,
You have a
everyone.
good one.